The Roman Senate had a god of sewers, Cloaca, a deity so mundane that citizens prayed to her while defecating on public benches, shoulder to shoulder with strangers, reading mail, and conducting business. They called the toilet a sign of civilization. By the Middle Ages, Europeans threw waste from windows into the streets. The paradox isn't that the toilet was lost, it's that we had it and chose to forget it. In 1596, an English courtier, godson to Queen Elizabeth the, invented a machine to return us to that vanished world. Sir John Harington, his device was so clever, the court laughed at it. For 250 years, it went nowhere. The toilet existed. Society rejected it. And when cholera came to London, it took a dead infant and a single pump handle to prove why everyone had been wrong all along. To understand how a sanitation technology could vanish for centuries, you need to see what came before. Rome's Cloaca Maxima, the Great Sewer, ran beneath the capital like a vein of dark water, 4 meters high and 3 meters wide, large enough, according to Strabo, that hay wagons could navigate it. The system was so imposing that the Romans deified it. But Rome fell, and with it fell the knowledge that human waste didn't have to poison your own neighborhood. Medieval London had no such system. By the 1600s, the city teemed with roughly 200,000 people, a population explosion that made the medieval solution of chamber pots and cesspits catastrophically inadequate. People threw waste into the streets. The Thames, which ran through the center of the city, wasn't a river. It was an open sewer. Still, the toilet existed, and it was about to be invented again. In 1596, Sir John Harington sat down and imagined a way to restore Rome's lost dignity. Harington was a courtier, clever, educated godson of Elizabeth I. He called his invention the Ajax. The title was a pun so deliberate that it survives in our language. Ajax equals Ajax equals privy. He was calling it the transformation of the shitter. Crude, yes, but he understood that naming something embarrassing, frankly, was the only way to stop being embarrassed by it. The Ajax worked like this: a bowl. Below it, a small tank of water. When you opened a valve, water flowed down, siphoning everything through a pipe into an underground pit. The water sealed the bowl, preventing gases from rising. It was Rome's trap principle rebuilt in wood and brass, a 2,000-year echo. Harington allegedly installed 1 or 2 prototypes at royal palaces, Richmond, Whitehall. No one used them. The court treated it as a joke, and in decades, the design was forgotten. The toilet could work. The culture couldn't accept it yet. 179 years later, a Scottish watchmaker named Alexander Cumming patented something that Harington lacked, the S-bend trap, a simple curved pipe beneath the bowl that held standing water, a permanent seal. Cumming's 1775 innovation meant gases couldn't rise from the sewer into your home. The technology was finally complete, and still no one wanted it. By 1778, Joseph Bramah, an English engineer, had improved Cumming's design with a brass valve mechanism that could close tighter than Cumming's gravity seal. Bramah manufactured roughly 6,000 water closets between 1778 and 1797. All of them were luxury items for wealthy customers. All of them required constant maintenance from skilled plumbers. The affluent could afford to install a toilet in their homes and keep a specialist on retainer. Everyone else, the vast majority, still used chamber pots or privies. The toilet existed. It was purchasable. It was still rejected. The great paradox is invention is not adoption. A machine can be perfect. If society fears it or can't afford it or doesn't understand why it matters, the machine stays forgotten. Then came 1854. A London physician named John Snow investigated a cholera outbreak clustered in the Soho neighborhood around Broad Street. Within 10 days, 578 people had died within 250 yards of a single intersection. Cholera causes catastrophic diarrhea and dehydration. Death often came in 24 hours. Medical consensus said cholera spread through the air. Miasma theory. Bad smells meant bad air meant disease. But Snow, interviewing families and charting their water sources, found something stranger. Almost every victim had drawn water from the Broad Street pump. The few people who didn't get sick had avoided it, and a mother who had washed her dead infant's soiled diapers near the pump, contaminating the water just upstream. Her actions had poisoned hundreds. On September 8th, 1854, snow persuaded the parish to remove the pump handle. After removal, new cases stopped appearing. Proof. The disease wasn't airborne, it was waterborne, and it proved something more: a properly isolated water supply, which is exactly what a sewerage system provides, could prevent catastrophe. But Londoners didn't celebrate infrastructure. They celebrated their ignorance being exposed, and the consequences kept arriving. The cholera pandemics of 1832, 1848, 1854, and 1866 claimed tens of thousands of lives across the city. Each time the message was the same: your waste is killing you. Each time London built nothing. And this episode is brought to you by a private community I run, where I break down 100,000 plus deep dive courses on history, business strategy, and how industries actually collapse and rebuild. If you've watched empires fail and wondered how to see it coming, the full history and strategy tracks inside go even deeper. Link is in the description below. Now back to the story, back to the sewers that saved us all. Then came the Great Stink of 1858. An unusually hot summer in London made the Thames so foul that the smell literally forced Parliament to abandon its sessions. Members fled the building. The stench was reportedly so intense it was visible, a brownish yellow haze. Benjamin Disraeli, sitting in the Commons, called the river a Stygian pool. The legislators, who had ignored statistics, disease, and death for decades, they couldn't ignore the smell. Fear worked where virtue failed. In 1858, mere months after the Great Stink, Parliament passed a bill funding London's sewerage system. Joseph Bazalgette, Bazalgette, a civil engineer, had the design ready. He'd calculated the maximum possible flow of sewage the city could produce based on population and consumption, and then he multiplied his estimate by 4. That 4-times safety margin, it seemed excessive, but London's population grew faster than projected, and when demand exceeded his conservative estimate, Bazalgette's foresight saved the system from overflowing. From 1859 to 1875, his crews laid 82 miles of main intercepting sewers and more than 1,100 miles of street sewers. The system moved raw waste downstream, away from London, to pumping stations and treatment facilities downstream of the city. By 1880, cholera deaths in London had dropped from 30,000 per outbreak to near zero. The sanitation that invention had failed to deliver, shame, and eventually fear, had finally forced it to arrive. The sewer saved lives before germ theory was proven. Robert Koch, K-A-O-K-H, wouldn't identify the cholera bacterium until 1883, but the infrastructure, the invisible pipes beneath the city, worked even when science couldn't explain why, and that lesson rippled outward. By 1890, every major European city and most American cities were building sewerage systems. Mortality from cholera, dysentery, and typhoid collapsed by 70 to 90% across the industrialized world. Not because medicine got better, because waste stopped poisoning water. And yet 2 billion people today still lack access to basic sanitation. The paradox persists. The technology works. Access is unequally distributed. In the wealthiest nations, we've forgotten that sanitation is the strangest, most effective public health intervention we've ever created. Stranger because it's invisible, more effective because it works before disease even arrives. 3 lessons hide in the toilet story. First, invention is not adoption. Harington's Ajax worked. For 250 years, it went nowhere. The gap between I built something and the world accepts it is not a technological gap, it's a cultural one. The toilet existed in principle since 1596, but until shame or fear or necessity made adoption inevitable, it remained theoretical. Second, fear beats virtue every time. Londoners ignored statistics about cholera deaths for decades. They ignored physicians, reformers, activists, and medical evidence. What they couldn't ignore was the smell. What finally drove action wasn't sanitation is morally right. It was Parliament's robes smell like sewage. Infrastructure, it turns out, requires emotional pressure, not moral clarity. And third, sanitation saves more lives in less time than any other single intervention in human history. Before antibiotics, before clean water treatment was fully understood, before anyone could explain the mechanism, invisible pipes beneath the earth reduced death from diarrheal disease by nearly 90%. The sewerage system is the most underrated achievement of the 19th century. It never appears in popular histories. No one worships Joseph Bazalgette. But his calculations and his brick, they have prevented more deaths than all the medicines that came after. The Roman senator who used the foricae didn't worry about the neighbor beside him. Defecation was natural, necessary, managed. Then we lost that. We made it shameful, hidden, private, and it nearly killed us. Only when the infrastructure returned, when the pipes came back, could the shame finally fade. The toilet is a machine, but it's also a mirror of how we treat necessity, hidden, denied, until the stench of ignoring it becomes unbearable. Every ordinary thing hides an extraordinary origin. The pipes beneath your city cost lives to learn. Remember that the next time you flush,